Alright guys, so some of you have been asking me to launch my build, so I'm going to show you what I've been running here in the Murkmire patch as a Stamina Warden, and we're going to go through it as fast as possible. We're going to do 3 builds. I'm going to do the one build as quick as possible, and then we're going to blow through the second one. So we're going to jump straight into it. We're a Stamina, we're a Warden. I'm an Argonian. I think Argonian is the better race for Warden. I think it's the better race for Stamina Warden specifically, and my personal playstyle. I just love the sustain on it. Jumping right into it. I'm in a non-CP Cyrodiil right now. So these are going to be non-CP stats. This health is very similar to what it is in Battlegrounds. So this is a good reflection of what it would be like in Battlegrounds as well. So obviously these numbers change in CP, but we're just going to go with the base here. 10k Magicka is pretty good. 10.4 gives me plenty of Magicka to play with. That little bit of Magicka recovery is fine. I'm at kind of a beefy 24k unbuffed. That goes up with my personal buffs, but 24k is a respectable number. I'm not a pure tank, but I'm not DPS, and I'm not one-shottable by most people, so I like it. Health recovery, I'm a vamp, but we've got plenty of health recovery built in. 25k, that's actually a little low. Something's missing. 25k stamina, not that bad. 15k stam recovery is a little low. We're again non-CP, but this gets up to about 2k stam recovery. So the 25k max stamina, no big deal. 29k weapon damage. We see well above 3k weapon damage in this build in combat, and we're going to go over that here in a moment. So, the build, as you can see, I run blood spawns. I like blood spawns for a warden. It gives me a lot of flexibility. You can see that I'm down here at 16k spell resistances and 1500 critical resistance on my front bar. On my back bar, I'm at 19k resistances and 18k or 1800 critical resistance. Bloodspawns really kind of helps me smooth that out. In combat, I'm getting an extra 6.4k front and back bar. And then with my buffs, this goes up as well. So let's talk about equipment, and then we'll talk about abilities, and then I'll show you the buffs. So this is just base. This is not how it plays. Blood spawns, it's huge. I already kind of touched on it with the resistances, but the ultimate is critical as well. Wardens admittedly have really good ultimate generation as it is, so when we play to that with blood spawns, the second half of blood spawns, it fits in really well. Both pieces of this equipment is it's just good. Tri-stat, I'm tri-stat across the board. I have too much going on not to be tri-stat, and you see I'm in pin. This is Divines, it needs to be in pin. I'm just, a bad player. It is what it is. The last piece is, or the next piece is 7th Legion. I prefer 7th Legion over Fury. I admit that I would get more weapon damage out of Fury, and some would argue more sustain out of more weapon damage, because my Vigor and my Soothing Spores and my Forward Momentum would all scale better from having more weapon damage. But I prefer the built-in heal proc every 2 seconds. It happens pretty much every 2 seconds too. From incidental damage, when you're really in the fray, that 10% proc goes off constantly. And I would rather just have the flat weapon damage as opposed to the build-up weapon damage. Personal preference. Maybe when I'm a better player or a higher CP, Fury might be better. But for now, I think 7th Legion is where it's at. I've really been enjoying it. The last piece that I'm running is Bone Pirates. So this is not very groundbreaking, guys. A lot of people are running this. The last piece I'm running is Bone Pirates because it's amazing. I run Bone Pirates for the increased damage and the increased sustain as far as stamina recovery goes. In order to get the 5th benefit of Bone Pirates, you have to have a drink, and then we're running the dubious drink, and I should be buffed with that. Um, I am buffed with Dubious right now, and I'm running the Warrior Mundus. Stage 4 Vamp. I try to keep that Stage 3, but today I'm Stage 4, so it is what it is. Let's just talk about some abilities here. On the front bar, when with two-hand, I like to run Subterranean Assault. Subterranean Assault hits so hard. Such a good ability for the Warden. The big thing is that burst damage, but you know, you can't you can't say anything negative about that Major Fracture either. It's good. Forward momentum on the front bar with the two-hand ability, it's a no-brainer really. It gives you that Major Brutality. We get Major Brutality from Bull Neige, we'll talk about that. It's another heal, it's part of your sustain package in the healing side of things, but the main thing is obviously that snare removal. It's pretty critical. Running Bird of Prey got some love in my opinion. I think it's valuable to run. Having that Berserk on the front bar plays into my overall strategy here. I'll explain that in a minute. But more important, I don't know if more important, but another benefit to it is that on-demand Major Expedition. Just being able to pop wings and just put on your sneakers and go is important. I like Reverse Slice. I've played with both Executioner and Reverse Slice. Yes, Executioner does more damage single target, but I think you get more value out of Reverse Slice. In PvE and PvP, definitely in PvE, but in PvP. So in those tight spaces, when you push down, you know, drop a little AoE, when you're clearing guards, incidental damage against players you're not even trying to attack, it hits hard, and I think you get more value out of it. So I run it. This is my flex spot. I run Crit Rush here. I like the I like the Gap Closer for Crit Run. Yeah, sorry about that. I like the Gap Closer for Crit Run, and it really kind of helps me get to that 50% threshold. So kind of a typical rotation for me would be to be on the back bar, throw my buffs up, pop Subterranean. It's got a 3-second cook before it goes off, so I'll cook it for about a second, and then I'll identify a target, critical rush to them, and then between Subterranean, a critical rush, and a light attack, all in the same frame. Most targets are in the 50% range for Reverse Slice to be working appropriately. If not, I just hit them a couple of times with a weak Reverse Slice, and then Reverse Slice will be in threshold. So that's why I prefer Crit Rush. I use the other morph, but this is a flex spot. I have run Dizzying Swing here before. I like it. Maybe if I get a little more practice with Dizzying Swing, I'll like it more. Dizzying Swing is very consistent, and it's got a huge tail, and good players can dodge roll through it and walk through you and play around it. But if you're just consistently dizzying with the Major Expedition, eventually you're going to land one, and it's going to be devastating. I play that here sometimes, so this is up to you. I like the Gap Closer. Dizzying Swing is very relevant. Here, I like Flawless Dawnbreaker. I like Flawless Dawnbreaker over the other Dawnbreaker because it makes Subterranean and Crit Rush hit harder. Don't forget that this isn't just 5% weapon damage. This is actually 8% weapon damage from Fighter's Guild Slayer. So you just get 8% weapon damage just across the board. And yes, true that I would hit harder with the other morph, but to me it's all about consistency on these bars. And I would like to have the Dawnbreaker to push down a target as opposed to kind of start the DPS train. To each their own, you know. So on the back bar, I'm running kind of my buffs and defenses. I'm running Sword and Board on the back bar. Icebreaker, or not Icebreaker, Ice Fortress. This is how we're getting a lot of our toughness, and we're fixing a lot of our resistances. This is how we can get away with playing with such aggressive armor sets, is Ice Fortress. You really feel when Ice Fortress is down. So I just have to be a better player and not let it fall off. Huge amounts of resistances here, and then 8% flat damage reduction. So it's big. come back to these. Bull Netch, while you're back here buffing, you might as well throw out Bull Netch. Bull Netch is going to give you that major brutality, major sorcery. It doesn't do anything here, but it gives you resources. Our primary resource in this build is stamina, so there's no reason not to cast it. Green Lotus is the last part of our sustain package. Green Lotus, I think if you've never played with it, you're going to be really surprised how much healing Green Lotus actually produces. If you're not light attacking constantly, you should be. And so basically what Green Lotus does is give you a hot every time you light attack, and when you heavy attack, you give it significant heal. Also, we're getting major savagery from it, so we don't have to pull it from another source like a potion. It's huge. Not only healing sustain though, some people may not realize in the green balance you get nature's gifts, and if you heal an ally with any ability, even like vigor or stamina abilities, right? If you heal an ally, you get resources. And so if you're already topped off and as part of your rotation you have Green Lotus activated and you're light attacking and you're topped off, and because it's a smart heal it goes somewhere, it goes to an ally, well, just for light attacking you're gonna heal that ally and get 250 resource. So if you're not sustaining your life with Green Lotus, you're sustaining your resources with Green Lotus. So it's pretty important. So that's kind of that's the last of our sustain package. But as far as our healing package goes, we have Resolving Vigor. That's one of our primary heals. I use both of these in conjunction, Resolving Vigor and Soothing Spores. If it's a situation where the constant rolling heals from Green Lotus, from Forward Momentum, from 7th Legion is not enough and I need some more heals, then I'm going to flip to the back bar, I'm going to pop Revolving Vigor, and I'm going to give myself a Soothing Spore. And I'm pretty much going to be topped back off. Sometimes it takes 2 Soothing Spores. Sometimes it takes blocking in a couple of Soothing Spores if I'm really being pressured. If I'm under that much pressure though, I'm not a tank. If I'm under that much pressure, I'm probably going to die. This is not a perma block build. This is more of like a frontline brawling DPS build. You know, I take damage and I deal damage. I don't just absorb it. With these 2 abilities though, I get to do something that's pretty unique. I get to go between pressuring the enemy and supporting my allies. If I say, for example, we're running a ram on a door in Cyrodiil and somebody dumps oil on us, you know, I can easily flip to this back bar, pop a Vigor, and back off and start Soothing Spores everybody and kind of fill that healer role. If I'm playing in like a small group, or maybe the healer's asleep at the keyboard or something, or if we're pushing through a choke, you know, I can pop Vigor and I can heal, do Soothing Spores as we're moving through that choke, and kind of help the heals, and that's kind of my play style. Permafrost, I don't know if I'll ever take Permafrost off my board. This tooltip says 3k. That's not necessarily right. So if I pop the that's not the right ability. If I pop the Bull Niche, then my tooltip actually goes up to 3.274. 3.274 is respectable, but remember, it's not 3.274. It's 3.274 plus 300 weapon damage from a light attack, plus 500 weapon damage from 7th Legion, and then when I flip to the front bar, plus 8% damage from Berserker, plus 8% more weapon damage from Flawless Dawnbreaker. So Permafrost from the back bar to the front bar, usually, even though my tooltip right now was only reading 3.274, it's usually hitting for closer to about 4.8 to 5k a second for 8 seconds in a PB AoE. And then anybody who's hit 3 times is stunned, and then everybody gets major protection. It's a massive ult. Use it. So that's pretty much the build. Show you the stats buffed now that you see it. So we're at 24. So here's our stats, right? Here they are. And here's our stats buff. So we're at 21 resistances front bar, 20 set, 24 back bar. We're at 25 crit, 28k damage. That still doesn't include the weapon damage from 7th Legion or the sword. And then our health will actually go up to anytime we heal ourselves. Sorry. See, we're at 26k. So pretty much just you take your blanket stats and everything improves. If we look at it, we're getting, just from our buffs alone, we get minor protection, major resolve, major ward, major brutality, which we don't care about, major savagery, and then skills. We get minor toughness and something else too, I'm sure. It's crazy. There's major endurance and major expedition built in here. We've pretty much got all the buffs, everything that we could possibly want. So that leaves us with essence of immovability for potions, man. I don't need buffs out of my potion. I don't need the major fortitude out of my potion. I just want the health. I don't need the major endurance. It's really nice that I don't have to pop wings for it, but what else am I going to use my magicka for? So really I can just I can use this immovability to get some more CC immunity, and I don't have to run potions as part of my rotation. I can run potions when I want it instead. So that's why I like running so many buffs. So that's pretty much the build. That's the first build. That's the primary build. This is what I run with for the most part, but I have some alterations. At this point, you guys can kind of ran through this. I am running Swift, but this is going to be infused. I have weapon damage on the jewelry. Nirnhone, your two-handed greatsword, and do run greatsword. Staff may be worth it, or not staff, mace may be worth it, but I prefer the greatsword for the flat damage. Big numbers are always good. You can get impin from CP, and if you're running this for a battleground build specifically, maybe mace is better. Put your weapon damage enchant on the back bar. Don't be like me and just be a better player and get your light attacks while you're on the back bar. I forget all the time, but what else are you going to do with it back there? That's pretty much it for the build. Here's an alteration. If you don't like two-hand, you can absolutely run this dual wield with very little changes. A dual wield build would look something like this. So the back bar doesn't change at all. That's one thing that I really appreciate. It feels very familiar. My 3 major buffs are still back there. My healing package is still back there. I can still switch and support my allies very effectively. And then Subterranean Assault doesn't change. It's still on the front bar. So what does change? What does change is Deadly Cloak. Obviously, you can't run forward momentum if you're running dual wield, so Deadly Cloak comes in to replace it. I feel like Deadly Cloak is an acceptable replacement for forward momentum. Forward momentum gives us a good amount of durability, and so does Deadly Cloak. Deadly Cloak now gives us 25% reduced damage from AoE, which is not nothing in PvP. It's very relevant. Bird of Prey. It stays the same, spin to win, steel tornado. It takes the place of our executioner, or reverse slice. It's arguably much better at AoE. I don't know that there's a better spammable PB AoE in the game right now. So it's great. It really is. And then we don't have a gap closer here, I run Cutting Dive. So Cutting Dive, so in my two-handed build, my single target pressure is light attacks and reverse slice with some splash damage, incidental splash damage. Here I have kind of the option to do either primarily AoE damage and light attacks with Steel Tornado, or single target somebody with Cutting Dive and light attacks. So I do enjoy having the flexibility here, but at the cost of my gap closer. Flex spots for this would be Deadly Cloak. Sometimes I don't feel like I need that extra damage reduction from AoEs, especially in Battlegrounds. So what I will run here is the new Psijic Order ability, Time Stop. Time Stop combos really well with Dual Wield. Dual Wield has a trait, if I can click the right one, that increases the amount of damage from attacking a stunned player, and Time Freeze stuns players. So a typical rotation would look like this in Battlegrounds. Say that's the choke up there. You know, I'll do the wind up, the pitch, and then once I'm in there, I'm just AoE and down all these people who get stunned in here. And then if you want to switch to single target, you can do some heavy attacks on a single target and spam Cutting Dive on them. And then you can go back to rotating your buffs, maybe heal an ally, throw a heal in their direction, and then so I play my builds kind of like that. I'm not a tank, I'm not a healer, I'm a brawler. I'm somewhere in between. And it works out pretty well for me. I enjoy it. So that's kind of the second build. I think this build is superior in PvE and in some PvP situations. I prefer my two-handed build, but each their own, right? So this is kind of a dramatically different build. You're not reading that wrong. It does say Stamina Healer PvE. Ignore the PvP, that one's still under construction. I will preface this build by saying this build works. I have healed just about every dungeon vet pug. I've pugged it and with pre-mades, so I'm not just getting carried. Stamina healing as a warden, especially as an Argonian warden, works, and you can do it without changing your attributes. And here we go. So I am currently running Blood Spawns in the same spot. I would like to be running Earthcore here. Blood Spawns works here. It works here better for PvP, but and I think Earthcore works better for PvE. Earthcore is also great for PvP. I want to run Earthcore. I don't have it. I'll let you know when I get it if this works. Shacklebreakers, heavy. And literally anything other than Impin, unless you're doing this for like a strictly PvP build, and probably tri-stats. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is I have successfully used this equipment in vet dungeons healing with garbage traits and garbage enchantments. It works. It can only get better. Shacklebreaker is really important for this build because even though I'm considering us as a stamina healer, because the majority of our healing does come from stamina abilities, we still have to support our healing with magicka abilities. And in order to be a successful support character, we're going to need some of those magicka abilities. So Shacklebreakers is pretty critical to scale both magicka and stamina. The last piece is Werewolf Hide. Werewolf Hide is pretty important. It combos really well with Blood Spawns, almost too well, to the point where you have so much ultimate that I want to trade out Blood Spawns for Earthcore. I think Werewolf Hide is going to be enough by itself to be able to rip off your healing ultimates whenever you want. As it is right now, I have so much ultimate that I could practically weave in the Enchanted Forest as part of my rotation. So it's just, I don't know, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, I think. But Werewolf Hide gives us basically an ultimate a second and then helps scale those that weapon damage as well. It's really important to this build. It works. This setup works. And there's so much about this that I could be doing better. I know it's only gonna get better. I just want to introduce this to you as kind of a concept. For example, I could put Berserker enchantment on the back bar here, and a weapon damage enchantment on the front bar, and dramatically increase my damage and my heals, because all of that would scale. I don't need the sustain from the jewelry, so all of that should be weapon damage. I could have any trait here other than Impin, and it would be better. I could have Tri-Stat here, and it would be better. But as it is right now, I'm already successfully healing vet trials. So that's a thing. Alright, so let's look at the skills that it takes to be able to do this. We've already kind of talked about Green Lotus, and Green Lotus does an insane amount of healing for us. We're going to be using those heavy attacks. And make sure that you are wearing that Resto staff. Even though we're not using any Resto abilities, the key to it all is this ability here. It gives you major mending for 3 seconds after completing a heavy attack, increases your healing by 25%. Well, when you heavy attack, you heal for 5k, but when you heavy attack, it increases that 5k by 25%, and when you heavy attack, it increases your vigor by 25%, and everything by 25%. So you're pretty much going to be spamming heavy attacks as part of your rotation. And then when we heavy attack, because we're wearing heavy armor, we're going to get a ton of stamina back, or magicka. We're going to get magicka back because it's a Resto staff, but if you heavy attack with the bow and the back bar, you get a ton of stamina. That's why I think it's important to be in heavy armor with this particular build. And throw energy orbs. You throw all those energy orbs out there to increase the DPS and to help your tank. Birds of Prey is a flex spot. I have Birds of Prey here because I have Birds of Prey there in every build. I just like the Major Expedition. It's very good for PvP. It doesn't really do much for healing in this build, so this could be anything. Vigor is one of your main heals. Pop this every 5 seconds. If somebody has squirreled away from you or is too far away for Vigor, Soothing Spores will be able to reach them. 20 meters is a long distance. Yes, they get healed more if you're right up on them in 8 meters, but you'll still be able to reach out and hit them at 20 meters. So I prefer to keep the group topped off with Vigor, but on some fights you just were not going to be able to heal with Vigor, and some fights you're going to need both Vigor and Spores. So you're just going to use these. You'll figure it out. You're going to be basically heavy attacking constantly to keep Major Mending up. You're going to keep Vigor on cooldown. You're going to fill the gaps with Spores, and anytime something bad happens, you're going to drop down an Enchanted Forest. And between Bloodspawns and Werewolf Hide, Enchanted Forest is always going to be available to you. And I truly believe that with Earthgore, basically what would happen is if something bad happened, Earthgore would automatically proc, and then you would get to make the choice, do I need to drop Enchanted Forest or not? And then you could stack those two. So I think Earthgore is going to be a good play. On the back bar back here, this can be literally anything. You can put a whole different weapon back here. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that's important is Ice Fortress and Bull Netch. Subterranean is absolutely a flex spot back here. I feel like Endless Hail and Caltrops are really good for trash, and they're okay for most boss fights, for like helping clear ads and whatnot. Basically, the only reason they're back here is because I have nothing to put back here, and I can drop them and come back to it 10 seconds later. To improve the build, I would definitely put some sort of weapon damage on the bow on the back bar, so that when I drop my Caltrops and Endless, I'm buffing my damage on the front bar. But guys, that's pretty much it. That's 3 builds in one. I will show you my CP. I'm low on but Warlord's gonna get increased by a lot. Mooncalf needs to be increased a little bit more, not by much, I don't think. Tumbling, probably a little bit more. Shadow Ward for sure. I need to put more in Shadow Ward. Blessed is probably where it's going to stay. Honestly, it's just extra damage, extra healing done. I might put a little bit more into Blessed. I definitely want to put a lot of points into Master at Arms, though. I just don't have the points yet. Right now, I'm filling out this tree. I'm going to buff up Piercing quite a bit because I use the Greatsword and not the Mace. Resistance probably where it's going to stay for quite a while, and Ironclad's probably where it's going to stay for quite a while. Right now I'm dumping points into Hardy and Elemental. I don't know if I'm going to put anything in Heavy Armor or not. We'll see. But alright guys, we'll see you out there. Peace.